The wind scraped grit across Danny's visor as he belly crawled to the ridge, heart pounding in his throat. His orders were simple. Recon a downed reaver skimmer, log any salvage, and get the hell out. Easy. No firefights, no heroics. Just a quiet look and a quiet report. But what he saw when he crested the dune stopped him cold. She stood in the shadow of the wreck, armor half shucked, skin gleaming like molten jade under the dying sun. Her breastplate was already on the ground, dented and scorched, and now her fingers worked the buckles on her forearm guards, peeling away layers of tactical gear with an ease that spoke of years in the field. Danny froze. He knew he should look away. He should log the wreck and crawl right back the way he came, but his eyes wouldn't move. Not from the strange, almost beautiful pattern of scars cutting across her toned green torso. Not from the faint shimmer of bioluminescent veins pulsing under her skin like liquid starlight. His recon drone blinked in the corner of his visor. Recording. Blinking red like a goddamn warning beacon. Shit. He jabbed at the control patch on his wrist, fingers fumbling with the override. Too late. The alien woman turned. One smooth motion. She ripped her sidearm free and leveled it at his skull. "You peek," she said, voice like steel dragged over ice. "You bleed." Danny froze, arms spread wide. Whoa, hey, not spying. Wrong place, terrible timing. Her eyes narrowed, slitted like a predator's, the barrel of her pistol steady. "Who sent you?" "Scout detail. Courier division," he stammered. "I was just checking the crash. Didn't know anyone was here." Honest liar, not lying. He forced a grin, sweat slicking his neck. If I was lying, would I still be crouched like a desert lizard instead of running my ass off? Her silence was worse than a bullet. Then slowly she stalked closer, the heat shimmering around her like a halo of fire. Up close, she was taller. Then him, shoulders roped with lean muscle, every movement balanced and lethal. The name etched into the side of her rifle made his stomach lurch. Ra Talon. He'd seen that name on bounty sheets. Deadliest mercenary in 3 sectors. "You're not Reaver," she said finally. "Do I look like a Reaver?" Danny blurted. "No bone masks. No ceremonial gut hooks. Just a guy with bad luck and worse timing." Something flickered in her eyes' amusement? Maybe. Or maybe that was the sun playing tricks. The barrel of her gun dipped an inch, just enough for him to breathe again. "One more mistake," Ra said flatly, "and I got you." "Crystal clear," he murmured. Only then did he notice the blood running down her side, dark against green skin, soaking the edge of her undersuit. "You're hit," he said, "not your problem." "Still bleeding," Danny countered. She raised a brow, a warning in her gaze. "I don't need help." Danny gave her a slow grin, the kind that usually got him punched. "Good thing I wasn't asking." And for the first time, her lips twitched almost a smile, almost a threat. Somewhere beyond the ridge, engines roared. Reaver bikes, closing fast. Ra's head snapped toward the sound. Then back to him. "Guess what, human?" She said, voice like a blade unsheathed. "You just ran out of luck." Danny swallowed hard, heart kicking like a wild thing. Whatever came next, it wasn't going to be quiet. The engines were a low growl at first, then a rising howl that rolled across the zoo. Salt flats like thunder. Danny's gut nodded. He didn't need optics to know what that sound meant. Reaver bikes, armed and hunting, kicking up a trail of fire and dust behind them. Ra didn't flinch. She just slid the last strap of her armor free and locked it into place with hands that moved like machinery. Her eyes, sharp and bright against the storm-streaked horizon, flicked to Danny. "Options?" he asked, voice pitched tight. "3, she said, calm as a glacier. "Hide, run, or fight." "Those?" Don't sound like good options. They're the only ones you've got, courier. She slung her rifle across her back, grabbed a second from the wreckage, and tossed it to him. Danny caught it awkwardly, the weapon heavier than anything he'd handled in months. You know I'm not infantry, right? Her smirk was razor thin. Then don't aim at me. The roar hit full force now, echoing through the canyon, a bone-rattling growl of engine turbines and pulse chargers spooling hot. Dust plumes crested the ridge, black silhouettes of bikes cutting through the haze. There were at least 6, maybe more, each rider clad in scavenged bone armor, weapons bristling like spines. Danny dropped to a crouch behind a slab of twisted skimmer hull, his fingers slick on the rifle grip. He risked a glance at Ra. She'd climbed atop the wreckage, one foot braced on a fractured wing, rifle steady against her shoulder. She looked like a war goddess carved from smoke and iron. You do this often? Danny muttered. Not with an audience, she said dryly, then settled her cheek to the stock and opened fire. The first shot cracked the air like thunder, blue plasma slicing across the flats and burning through a rider's chest. The bike spun. Out, crashed in a blossom of fire. Another rider veered, circling wide, spitting rounds from a mounted scattergun. Shards of molten steel hissed past Danny's head, punching holes in the wreck behind him. Frag this? Danny growled, teeth bared. He popped out of cover and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked hard, slamming into his shoulder, but the shot went wild, streaking into the dirt 2 meters off target. Nice warning shot, Ra called, voice ice cool as she dropped another rider. Maybe they'll surrender out of pity. Danny swore under his breath, ejected the cell, and slammed another in. Not funny. Wasn't joking. Another burst chewed up the wreckage. Heat shimmered against his cheek. Danny ducked, brain sparking. He spotted a half-buried fuel cell jutting from the skimmer's flank, its casing cracked like an eggshell. He stared at it for half a heartbeat and grinned. Cover me. He yelled. You're not running, are you? Not exactly. He bolted, sprinting low along the twisted frame as plasma bolts scorched the dirt around his boots. He dropped to his knees at the fuel cell, ripped open the housing, and yanked the regulator free with a satisfying snap. His fingers shook as he jammed a plasma round into the conduit, praying it wouldn't detonate in his face. Then he ran like hell. Ra! He shouted, diving back behind the hull. Down! She didn't ask why. She just moved, vaulting from the wreck and hitting the dirt beside him an instant before the explosion ripped the canyon in half. The blast was a sunburst searing light and a wall of fire that turned the nearest reaver bikes into molten wreckage. Shockwaves hammered Danny's ribs, sent him rolling across the grit. His ears rang like struck bells. When the smoke cleared, only 2 bikes were left, one spinning out of control, the other already retreating in a trail of black smoke. Danny staggered upright, lungs burning. Ra was already on her feet, green skin streaked with soot, eyes like burning coals in the dim light. Not bad, she said, voice rough. Then, after a beat, for someone who almost got shot 5 minutes ago, Danny managed a crooked grin. Improvisation's kind of my thing. Keep improvising, Ra replied, scanning the horizon. Her tone shifted, hard as tempered steel. That was a scout wing. If they tracked me here, the whole sector's hot. Danny swallowed, adrenaline still pounding. Tracked you? You want to tell me why reavers care enough to hunt one merc across half a desert? Ra's jaw clenched. She looked past him, toward the smoldering wreck. No. Figures, Danny muttered, slinging the rifle over his shoulder. So what now? Ra's gaze locked on his, sharp enough to cut glass. Now you choose, human. Run alone or walk beside me. Danny hesitated only a second. Then he stepped closer, his voice low. Guess I'm walking. Her mouth curved barely. a flicker of something that might have been approval. Then she turned toward the wrecked bikes, boots crunching on scorched stone. "Then move fast," she said without looking back. "This war's about to start breathing down our necks." Danny exhaled, staring at the burning horizon. He had no idea what he'd just signed up for. But his gut told him this was only the beginning, and Ra Callan was the kind of trouble a man didn't walk away from. Not alive. Anyway, the desert swallowed sound after the fight. No more engines. No more screaming bikes cutting across the flats. Just the brittle rasp of wind sliding over the wreckage and the distant groan of metal cooling in the dusk. Danny's pulse was still a wild drumbeat in his ears as he followed Ra through the skeletal remains of the skimmer. Her stride was sharp, decisive, like every step belonged to her. She didn't look back, didn't slow, just cut through the wreckage until they reached what was left of the survival pod buried in a dune. With a grunt, she ripped the hatch open and hauled out a ration pack, 2 canteens, and a battered field lantern. "We can't stay here," Danny said, voice low, scanning the horizon. If those were scouts, they were. Rest long the pack over her shoulder without missing a beat. "And they'll send more. Then what's the plan?" "We move," she said, like it was the only word that mattered. Then her eyes flicked over his shoulder to the darkening sky. "Not now. They'll have drones up. Easier to track in heat shimmer." She started walking toward a jagged ridge where rust-colored stone tore out of the flats like broken teeth. "We camp there." Danny blew out a shaky breath and followed. His boots crunched over the cracked salt pan, the wind clawing at his jacket. Every muscle ached from the blast, and the rifle weighed heavy on his back, but he didn't complain. Ra walked like fatigue was a rumor. Even bleeding, even carrying half a wreck's worth of salvage, she moved with a predator's grace, steady, silent, lethal. The ridge offered a shallow cut where a rock hauler lay half buried in sand, its hull corroded, its cargo bay yawning open like a dead beast's jaw. Ree ducked inside without hesitation. Danny hesitated, then followed into the dim hollow. It smelled of iron and dust, the air cool against his skin. Ray dropped the pack, pulled the lantern from the straps, and thumbed it on. Pale light bloomed, carving sharp shadows across her face. "Home sweet ruin," Danny muttered, sinking onto a slab of fractured decking. "You do know how to pick a spot." "It's cover," Ra said, kneeling to strip off her shredded shoulder. "Guard, that's enough." Danny's eyes caught on the dark streak along her side. The blood was worse now, soaking the edge of her undersuit, sticky and black against green skin. "You're leaking," he said softly. "I said it's nothing. Nothing doesn't look like that." He stood, crossed the space between them, and crouched low. "Let me help." Her head snapped up, eyes hard. "I don't need." "I wasn't asking," Danny cut in, voice firm for the first time since they met. Silence stretched between them like wire. Then Ra exhaled through her nose and turned just slightly, peeling her vest down one shoulder to expose the wound. The gash ran deep, ugly, torn open by shrapnel. Danny's stomach tightened, but his hands stayed steady as he dug a med patch. From his belt, he worked fast cleaned the wound with polymer foam, sealed the tear, pressed the patch down until the gel hissed and bonded. His fingers brushed the edge of her skin, warm and slick under the glow. Ray didn't flinch this time. She just watched him, eyes unreadable, lips pressed thin. 5 seconds, she said quietly. "That's all you get." Danny smirked without. Looking up, "I only need 3. When he finished, he sat back on his heels, wiping his hands on his trousers. "You're patched. Try not to get shot again." Ra pulled her vest up, movements slow, deliberate. "You're good with your hands," she murmured. He glanced at her, one brow raised. "You're not too bad with a rifle." That earned him the faintest flicker of a smile there, and gone like heat haze. Then she leaned back against the bulkhead, eyes sliding shut for a moment. The lantern painted her in molten gold, throwing every scar into sharp relief. She looked carved from the war itself, hard lines, brutal edges, and yet, somehow, she still stole the air from his lungs. Danny sat across from her, rifle propped against his knee, and listened to the wind claw at the metal shell outside. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Ra's voice cut through the dark, soft as grit underfoot. "You ever wonder why people like us live this way?" she asked, eyes still closed. "Running, fighting, never staying." Danny studied her, then said quietly, "Every damn day." Her lips curved, bitter. "Curiosity kills faster than bullets, courier." "Maybe," he said, leaning back against the cold metal. "But it keeps us alive long enough to ask the question." Her eyes opened then, locking on his. There was something there he hadn't seen before, something raw, unguarded, burning just beneath the surface. Outside, the wind moaned through the wrecks like a dying animal. Inside, two killers sat in the glow of a single lantern, each wondering how close they could get before the world burned them both. And somewhere in the dark, Danny realized the line between survival and something else was already blurring. ChatGPT. Sighed. The night bled into gray dawn before either of them slept. Danny dozed in fits, rifle across his chest, waking to the sound of Ra's breathing and the hiss of wind outside. When the first streaks of sun cut across the salt flats, she was already on her feet, rearming like a soldier carved from iron. They moved before the heat came silent across the dunes, cutting between broken ridges that rose like rusted bones. From the desert, Danny didn't ask where they were going. Rad didn't tell him. She just walked like she had a map burned into her veins, every step sure, every glance scanning for ghosts in the dust. 2 hours in, they reached an old refuel station half collapsed into the sand. Ra crouched low, eyes narrowing as she traced. Patterns in the grit tire tracks, deep and wide, stamped fresh into the crust. Danny crouched beside her, heart tightening. "Reavers?" he asked. "Not scavengers," Ra said, voice flat. "These are heavy hauls. Trucks, skiffs, mobile salvage convoy." Her gaze swept toward the eastern flats. "Headed for the canyon." Danny frowned. "Canyon?" She didn't answer. Not because she didn't want to, but because someone else did. A voice slid out from the shadows of the refuel shack. Low, edged with smoke. "You're tracking them too, huh?" Danny spun, rifle snapping up. A figure leaned against a corroded pillar, one hand raised in mock surrender, the other resting casual on a hip holster. A woman slight, wiry, eyes glinting amber behind cracked goggles. Dust-streaked leathers hugged her frame like second skin, and a grin curved her lips like she'd just read the punchline to a joke, only she got. "Who the hell?" Danny started. "Name's Zay," she said easily, stepping into the light. "And if you're smart, you'll put that barrel somewhere else before someone puts one in you." Ra didn't lower her weapon. "Talk fast?" Zay chuckled. "Relax, soldier girl. I'm not Reaver. Used to run salvage before they hijacked my crew 2 months back. Been tailing their convoys ever since." She tilted her chin toward the tire tracks. Same prints, same bastards. Ra's eyes flicked to Danny, then back to Zay. "What do they want?" Zay's grin faded. She slid something from her belt pouch. A cracked datapad, its screen spider-webbed, but still alive with flickering schematics. Not just scrap, not just fuel. She tapped the screen, and a crude map shimmered in the dim light. "They're moving something big through Basalt Ravine. Look here, launch coordinates, crate manifests." Her finger traced a string of encrypted tags. "Warhead components. heavy payload. City killer class. Danny felt his stomach drop. Like a stone. City killer? His voice cracked. You mean... I mean if they light this thing, Zay cut in, her tone turning to steel. An entire valley goes dark. And they're targeting Yarrow's Gate. Danny's breath locked. In his throat. He'd been there. Pulled supply runs to the outpost with its markets and water towers, and the kids who used to wave from the scaffolds when his skimmer cruised low. Faces flashed in his mind, bright and laughing, and then burning, breaking apart under a blast. He couldn't stop. Ra's jaw was iron, her eyes like twin knives under the brim of her hood. When? She asked, voice calm as a blade sliding free. Clock's ticking, Zay said. They'll have the warhead mounted by tomorrow night. Maybe sooner. Danny swallowed hard, forcing words past the tightness in his chest. You knew about this? He asked Ara, voice low, almost dangerous. Her head turned, slow and deliberate, until her gaze pinned him where he stood. I knew they were building something, she said. Didn't know what. Not until now. You still weren't going to tell me. You didn't ask, Ra said simply. Then she turned back to Zay. You've got clearance codes? Dead. Tech ones, Zay replied. They'll spoof scans long enough to get us inside if we look the part. Ra considered her for a long, icy moment. Why help us? Zay smiled, all teeth and no warmth. Because I hate them more than you do. The wind screamed through the broken rafters overhead, tossing grit like knives. Danny stared at the two women, feeling the weight of the choice pressing down like a mountain. This isn't Recon anymore, he said quietly. Ra's gaze cut back to him, hard, unflinching. No, she said. This is war. Danny looked at her, really looked, and something shifted in his chest. The lines of her face were sharp with fury and loss, but beneath that, buried deep, was something else. A ghost of a vow, a promise to someone who wasn't breathing anymore. And he realized, with a sudden clarity that stole his breath, that if he walked away now, he'd never forgive himself. Not after Yarrow's Gate, not after what they'd both lost. I'm in, he said. Ra's eyes lingered on him for one. Beat too long. Then she nodded once, sharp as a blade cutting a knot. Zay grinned like the devil. Then let's make some trouble. Outside, the horizon shimmered with heat and death, and far beyond the salt flats, a canyon yawned like the mouth of a waiting grave. Somewhere in its black veins, a warhead was counting down to fire, and 3 people who had no business surviving. This were walking straight into hell. Asterisk, the canyon was a wound in the earth jagged, basalt walls rising like black glass under a bruised sky. Danny crouched in the shadow of a fractured ridge, sweat trickling down his spine as his eyes followed the Reaver convoy snaking along the valley floor. Trucks hauling crates the size of skimmers, bikes flanking in tight formation. And in the middle, looming like a dark god, the armored cradle of the launch rig. Beside him, Ra lay prone, her rifle balanced on a rock, gaze sharp as razors. Her voice slid out low, just for him. Count 2 guards on the rear truck. Thermal reads a 3rd inside the cab. Danny's throat felt dry as ash. You sure about this? She didn't look at him. No, but it's better than storming. The front door. Zay crouched behind them, pulling a bundle of grease-streaked fabric from her pack and tossing it into Danny's lap. Put this on, hero. Danny unrolled it. Reaver fatigues. Sweat-stiff, blood-stained, and smelling like someone had died in them, which, judging by the dried maroon streaks, wasn't far from the truth. He grimaced. Great. Nothing says infiltration like wearing another guy's death clothes. Better. His than yours, Zay shot back, tugging her own uniform into place. Fasten the tag when you're done. Scanner sweep'll fry you without it. Ra rose smoothly to her feet, stripping her patched armor piece by piece, movements clean, unhurried. Danny told himself not to look, told himself again when his eyes betrayed him. Her undersuit clung like a second skin, dust streaking green. Across black fabric, muscles rippling like coiled wire as she slid into the Reaver jacket. Eyes up. "Courier," she said, without looking his way, voice cool and sharp as broken glass. "Just making sure the disguise fits," Danny muttered. Ra glanced back then, one brow arched, and something flickered across her face, a spark, gone as fast as it came. "Worry about yourself." Minutes later, they were moving. Down the ridge, low and silent, slipping between shattered rocks until the convoy's noise drowned their footfalls. At the rear truck, Ray's blade whispered free. 2 guards dropped. Without a sound, throats opened like paper, bodies dragged beneath the axle. Zay jammed a bypass key into the cab door, slicing its alarm with a hiss of static. They climbed inside. Danny slid behind the wheel, heart hammering. Ra dropped into the passenger seat, tucking her rifle between her knees. The cab smelled of fuel and blood. Through the cracked windshield, the canyon stretched ahead like a black vein. "Just act like you belong," Zay murmured from the back, pulling the tarp over a crate of stolen charges. Danny gripped the controls and rolled forward into formation, pulse roaring in his ears. No alarms, no shouts. Just the rumble of engines echoing off the stone. Hours crawled by like years. Checkpoints slid past in waves of sweat and tension. Twice, patrol guards scanned their badges, dead tech tags humming green on the display. Twice, Danny's lungs locked until the signal chirped cleared out at last. The convoy funneled into the ravine's throat, walls rising higher, shadows swallowing the sun. Floodlights burned against the rock like false stars, casting jagged beams across scaffolds that climbed the basalt like a spider's web. And there, in the center of it all, the warhead loomed, a black spear mounted on its cradle, runes of hazard stripes glowing like veins of fire. Zay leaned forward, breath ghosting hot against Danny's neck. "That's your target. Primary. Stabilizer on the load spine. Pop it, and the whole cradle eats itself alive." Danny swallowed hard. "Easy for you to say." Ra's voice slid in, quiet, lethal. "We move now." Before rotation. They parked the truck in a row of haulers and spilled out, heads down, bodies loose with the false swagger of soldiers who belonged here. No sudden moves, no eye contact. The air reeked of ozone and oil, engines roaring like chained beasts beyond. The scaffolds. Near a service lift, 2 guards lingered, laughing over a dice game. Ra slowed, her face turning toward Danny, lips brushing his ear in a whisper like smoke. "Follow my lead." He opened his mouth, but her hand caught his collar and dragged him close. Then her lips crashed into his, hard and hot, a kiss like a gunshot that stole his breath and his balance all at once. For half a second, Danny froze. Then the world narrowed to heat and metal and the taste of war on her tongue. Her fingers tangled in his jacket, hips grinding just enough to sell the lie as the guards glanced up, snorted, and turned away, muttering something crude in Reaver. Slang. When she pulled back, Danny's pulse was a live wire. Ra's smirk cut like a blade as she murmured, "You peek again, courier. You pay next time." Danny's grin was shaky, his voice lower than it should have been. "Worth it." "Move," she snapped, though there was a shadow of something else in her eyes, something raw, something dangerous. They slipped past the guards and into the lift, hearts pounding as the platform dropped into darkness. Below them, the base pulsed with red lights and steel arteries, and the warhead waited like a god of fire, dreaming of ruin. Tomorrow wasn't coming for Yarrow's gate, not if they burned hell down first. Asterisk, the lift clanged to a stop with a shudder that ran through Danny's bones. Below, the warhead chamber opened like the throat of a beast, a cavern of black glass and iron veins, humming with power. Crimson hazard lights pulsed along the catwalks in slow, ominous rhythm, throwing everything into jagged relief. The smell of ozone hung thick in the air, mingling with sweat, oil, and the metallic tang of imminent death. Danny's breath fogged inside his helmet as his eyes locked on the centerpiece. The warhead, a black spear of annihilation, cradled in a rotating lift frame 30 meters high. Fuel lines coiled like serpents into its belly, feeding the monster. Above, cranes crawled like skeletal spiders, loading the last of the stabilizers. Engineers in thermal rigs scurried along platforms, calibrating launch vectors, unaware of the three ghosts who had just slipped inside their sanctum. Rhea moved first, silent, coiled, lethal. Her stolen Reaver uniform clung to her like shadow, but it couldn't hide the simmering storm in her eyes. She scanned the structure, fingers grazing the outline of the microcharges on her belt. 3 points, she murmured, voice barely more than breath. Load spine. 2 at the base, 1 high. Danny's throat went dry. He stared up at the vertical maze of scaffolding, a black latticework vanishing into red gloom. I'll take the base, he whispered. Raz's head snapped toward him, sharp enough to cut glass. No, you're slower. He smirked, forcing steel into his voice, even as his pulse hammered. Guess I'll just have to move faster. Her eyes burned into his, and for a moment, just a moment, something cracked in that iron stare. Fear. Not for herself, for him. Then it was gone, and she was turning away. Fine, don't die, she said, and vanished into the shadows like a blade sliding between ribs. Danny crouched low, slipping beneath a girder, every step a gamble. He kept his breathing shallow, his hands steady as he planted the first charge beneath the stabilizer joint. The adhesive hissed, the timer flicked green 10 minutes. Enough time to get out. Maybe dot above, Ra was a wraith in motion climbing. Hand over hand, muscles rippling beneath the black rig as she scaled the skeletal spine toward the apex. Danny's gaze snagged on her silhouette, fierce and fluid against the blaze of red light, and something hot and uninvited curled in his chest dot. Then the voice came. Low. Wrong. Well. Thought I smelled a ghost. Danny froze. The Reaver. Commander stepped from the shadows like a nightmare, made flesh massive, armored in bone plates streaked with soot, a predator's grin splitting his scarred face. His pulse rifle gleamed murder in the crimson haze. You really think we don't watch our dead tech tags? The Reaver hissed, circling like a wolf, Lyrian blood and a stray Terran dog. Cute trick. His eyes flicked upward, tracking Ra. On the girders, but not cute enough. Danny's instincts screamed. He moved. The first shot scorched past his head, vaporizing a steel beam in a spray of sparks. He rolled, came up swinging his carbine, and caught the bastard across the jaw with the buttstock. Bone crunched. The Reaver roared, backhanded him so hard his visor cracked. Pain flared white-hot in Danny's skull as he hit the deck. Above, Ra dropped like a thunderbolt. Her blade flashed silver as she slammed into the commander's back, driving steel for his throat. But the Reaver was faster than anything that size had a right to be. He twisted, seized her wrist, and wrenched the blade away with a snarl that shook the girders. Danny staggered up, vision swimming, blood hot in his mouth. He saw the Reaver lift Rye like a ragdoll and slam her against a beam. Her breath tore out in a strangled gasp. Fury detonated in Danny's chest. He charged. No thought, no plan, just raw, feral need. His shoulder drove into the Reaver's spine, teeth rattling with the impact. The commander bellowed, spinning, fists hammering. Danny caught a punch across the ribs, felt something crack, but he didn't stop, didn't care. He clawed for the fallen sidearm, swung it up, and jammed the barrel under the Reaver's chin. The shot blew the bastard's skull apart in a geyser of black-red spray. A body hit the deck like a felled beast, shaking the scaffold to its core. Danny collapsed to one knee, lungs heaving, pain screaming through every nerve. His ears rang. His vision flickered, but through the haze he saw her. Ray. She dropped to her knees beside him, hands gripping his vest, eyes blazing. "Stupid," she hissed, voice raw and shaking. "Stupid, stupid human, still breathing," he rasped, coughing blood. "You're welcome." She froze, something breaking open in her face, and then her lips were on his fierce, desperate, tasting of salt and blood and fire. The kiss seared through him like a detonation, earning everything in its wake. Her fingers tangled in his collar, dragging him closer as if the world could end, and she'd still take this one moment before it did. When she pulled back, her breath shuddered against his mouth. "We're not done," she whispered. "Move." Alarms howled through the chamber, red lights strobing like arterial bursts. The charges blinked green on Danny's HUD-3 armed. 3 promises of hell above them. The warhead loomed like a god ready to fall, and time was bleeding out fast. Asterisk. The alarms shrieked like dying machines, echoing through the warhead chamber as crimson strobes tore across the steel veins of the base. Sirens howled. Overhead, klaxons roared warnings in Reaver tongue, words that boiled down to one truth: breach, breach, breach. Danny staggered to his feet, ribs screaming with every breath. Ra hauled him up by his vest, her grip iron despite the tremor in her fingers. Behind them, the charges blinked their death song. 257, 256. Time was bleeding out fast. Lifts fried. Zay barked over the comm from somewhere above, her voice jagged with static. Whole shafts locked down. "You're boxed unless you find another way. Maintenance chute." Ra snapped, dragging Danny toward a service hatch set into the bulkhead. A steel iris sealed it tight, blinking red across its biometric locks. Danny slammed his shoulder into the panel, pain detonating through his chest. "That's solid." "Not for long," Ray hissed, yanking a plasma cutter from her belt. The beam sizzled white-hot, spitting sparks as she carved a brutal arc through the alloy. Metal screamed and split like bone. The chamber groaned behind them, cranes retracting, platforms shuddering as the warhead's cradle began to rise emergency protocols, trying to launch the beast before it died. Danny's gut turned to ice. If that silo cleared the roof before the charges hit, Ra, he barked. "I know." Her teeth flashed in the firelight as the last strip of metal gave way. She kicked the hatch open, heat waves rolling like a furnace wind from the shaft beyond. "Go." Danny dove into the chute headfirst, metal scraping his forearms as gravity swallowed him whole. The shaft angled hard, pitching him into a twisting slide that ripped the breath from his lungs. He slammed against a grate, rolled, came up hacking. As Ra landed beside him like a falling star, they ran. No time to think. No time to breathe. Just boots hammering metal rungs, sirens wailing, and the thunder of a dying god behind them. The floor shook, throwing them against walls as detonations started chewing through the girders above. Smoke punched down the shaft in choking waves. Zay appeared from the shadows like a phantom, goggles glinting. "About fragging time." "This way." She spun, sprinting toward a yawning vent duct that spilled cold night air like salvation. Danny's lungs burned. His legs screamed. But when he saw the glow of open desert, beyond that great star's cold, and horror over horizon streaked. With fire something savage tore loose in his chest. The last 10 meters blurred in a hurricane of grit and heat. Then they were outside exploding into the salt wind as the maintenance duct vomited them into the canyon's throat. Danny hit the dirt hard, rolled, and came up gasping as the sky split open behind him. The base didn't just collapse. It erupted a white-hot sun, clawing its way up from the bones of the ravine. Fire boiled into a mushroom bloom, devouring scaffolds and towers and ribbons of liquid steel. Shock waves punched across the flats, hurling Danny to his knees as shards of the salt screamed overhead. The air tasted like blood and burning worlds. He turned his head and saw her Ra, standing like a war-born specter against the inferno, hair whipping in the storm, eyes blazing wild and alive. She looked at him then, not like an enemy, not even like an ally, but like something deeper, something dangerous, something already his dot. He pushed to his feet, ribs screaming, and staggered toward her. "Still think we won't make it?" he rasped. Her lips curved in a shadow smile, the fire painting her skin molten gold. Still thinking. Before he could answer, she crossed the distance in a blur, fisting his jacket, dragging him into a kiss that burned hotter than the blaze behind them. No masks, no lies, just raw, unbroken want. Her fingers curled against his spine, like she meant to weld him there forever. When she pulled back, breath ragged, her voice was smoke and steel. "Don't make me regret this, courier." Danny's forehead touched hers, both of them trembling, both alive by a thread. "Not a chance," he said. They didn't wait for dawn. They moved through the ruins like ghosts, carrying 3 rescued prisoners and more scars than either could count. By the time the evac skimmer swept low over the salt flats, the canyon was a furnace and the reaver gleam of fire was ash. Hours later, in the cold hum of the med bay, Ra found him sitting shirtless on a cot, bruised and grinning like an idiot. She didn't speak, just pressed something into his palm, a thin scanner chip, its screen pulsing soft blue. Danny frowned. "What's this?" "Ran a med sweep before we left," she said, voice low. "Curiosity." The chip blinked once, throwing a single, undeniable readout across the display. Heartbeat. 2 of them. Danny stared. The room tilted. "V didn't let him finish." She leaned in, lips brushing his ear, whispering like a secret carved in fire. "It's not just me anymore." His throat closed. His chest cracked open like a dam. For the first time in years, he smiled without the weight of blood behind it. "Well," he breathed, voice breaking into something that might have been a laugh. "Guess I'm still paying off that view bill." Her answering smirk was all teeth and danger. Then her hand slid into his warm and unyielding beyond the med bay window. The night burned with the ghosts of a war that never touched them again. Because sometimes the galaxy didn't need saving. Sometimes it just needed 2 broken things to find each other and start building something that might last. End.